Right. Good afternoon and welcome to the Audit Risk Committee of Monday, 25th of January 2024. So welcome to everybody. I'd like to remind members and the committee to keep the microphones on mute throughout the meeting unless they're speaking. And can I also remind councillors and officers in the chambers and online to use the chat box to attract my attention. Do we have any apologies, Miss Malloy?
Thanks, convener. We don't have any official apologies this afternoon, but for those joining us online, when I call out your name, could you please confirm you're present? Councillor Harvey.
Present.
And Councillor Colin Stewart.
Present.
Thank you. All members are present, convener.
Do we have any declarations of interest? No, I don't see any at the moment. Thank you. Can we, are members happy to agree the public minutes of the meeting of the 11th of December 2023? Right. Thank you. Well, we've got the outstanding business statement in front of us. Are there any questions or comments even on the statement? I'd just like to say that the presentation we had on PK Performs was extremely useful and helpful, and I know that Councillor Colin Stewart has been trying to interest the IJB, and I've been supporting on that in adopting this package. So a highly successful briefing. Thank you. I'm now going to ask, can I ask if the outstanding business statement can be noted? Great, thank you very much. I'm now going to ask Ms. Brown, who is the Audit Director of Audit Scotland, to introduce the annual audit plan.
Thanks, convener. Just to say to the committee, I am your new appointed auditor. Brian Howarth, who was your appointed auditor from last year and would normally been your director for 5 years, retires at the end of this month. So I've taken over his audit portfolio. So it's very nice to be here today. Thank you. If you would bear with me, I'll run through the annual audit plan, which sets out the planned work we are doing for this coming audit year and the audit risks we've identified. There are some aspects I'm required by auditing standards to draw to your attention as those charged with governance, and there are some points that we will revisit at the end of the year before we sign off your financial statements. So I'll just run quickly through the introduction. Sets out the purpose of the plan, sets out the aspects of our audit work, in addition to an audit of the financial statements, which is the bulk of our audit work. As public sector auditors, we're required to cover wider scope areas and also some grant claim audits. So that's listed there on the front page. The introduction also sets out the relevant responsibilities of the council, of this committee, and of myself as your appointed auditor. And I'll draw your attention to paragraph 8, which asks committee members to bring to my attention now and throughout the audit any instances of actual or suspected fraud in the council, other than that which is reported formally through this committee, to just say, please draw that to my attention, either through internal audit or directly through this meeting. And I will also seek similar assurances at the end of the year when I bring the annual audit report to you. So just to say there that it's important that those charged with governance have an awareness of the fraud risk within the council. And I'll talk a bit further about our consideration of fraud risk as auditors. So if there's anything in my assessment of fraud risk that jars with the committee, could you bring that to my attention, please? Thank you. The annual accounts section of the plan sets out the risks that we have identified of misstatement in your financial statements, and it covers the materiality levels that we set. We operate a risk-based audit, and the materiality level is the level at which we consider that a misstatement would influence the decision of an economic user of the accounts. So for this year, we've set out the council's materiality, and because you have group financial statements, set out materiality for the group accounts as well. And it sets out the different levels, which include a trigger. Performance materiality is a trigger where if we found an error of that magnitude, we would carry out or consider carrying out further audit work. And the reporting threshold for errors is set there at £500,000. So anything above that would be brought to this committee's attention in our annual audit report. In Exhibit 2, the significant risks of material misstatement, the first one is a standard risk. It speaks about the risk of fraud due to management override of controls. That's not a reflection on Perth and Ross Council's specific management of controls. That's a presumed risk across all audits. So if you look at any annual audit plan that we have, you will see that risk, and you will see the procedures that we undertake to address that risk. So that's standard risk. And you may also recognise other risks from last year's annual audit plan. Estimation and the valuation of your other land and buildings is another significant risk of material misstatement, because there's subjectivity in the estimation that's applied there. And we set out the work that we do to challenge the valuer's assumptions and satisfy ourselves that there's a reasonable valuation put on other land and buildings. And similarly, we have a risk of material misstatement, again, due to the subjectivity of estimation in the valuation of pension assets or liabilities. And again, we look at the actuaries' assumptions and the reasonableness of them, and we engage an auditor's expert to do that, because I am not an actuary. So we contract with somebody else, an actuary, to review local government pension scheme actuaries' assumptions. We'll say at paragraphs 18 to 20, there are further presumed risks of fraud in any set of accounts. We've set out here how we have or why we have rebutted those risks, given the nature of the local authorities' income and expenditure streams. And because we operate a risk-based audit, we've been able to target our audit work and rebut those assumed risks. There's a section on group accounts that the council has, and also the council administers charitable trusts, whereby the elected members are trustees of those trusts, and that brings you within the purview of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973, and you're required to be audited by Audit Scotland for that purpose, and that similarly sets out materiality levels for the charitable trusts there. There's then a section on the wider scope of public sector audit that covers financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, and your use of resources to improve outcomes. We've not identified any specific risks about those areas. We will carry out standard audit work to report on those areas at the end of the year. And we also carry out best value audit work. Best value regime changed with this new appointment round. So we now do thematic based work. And this year's theme is on workforce innovation. So we're just setting up introductory meetings for that work there. The section on reporting arrangements, the timetable and the audit fee is next. We're obviously bringing you the annual audit plan today. We will bring you the thematic best value management report in September, and we plan to bring the annual audit report to you in December. The timetable here sets out that we would not normally, as in pre-COVID timescales, aim to sign off local government accounts by the end of September, but given the backlog of COVID work that we have in Audit Scotland, we are recovering our deadlines over a longer period. So we are planning to do field work to conclude that for clearance at the start of November, and then bring you an annual audit report to the scheduled December audit committee. And at paragraph 43, we set out the audit fee for the council, which is £350,000 for this year, which is an increase of 6%. We are very mindful that an increase in the audit fee is not welcome at a time of restricted finances. I'm very mindful of that and the burden that sits on local government in terms of financial constraints, but to assure the committee that we are trying to maximise efficiency in the audit approach. The ask of auditors is increasing and not decreasing. You may see that in the press. But I can give more detail on that if you would like. But just say we are mindful of that and we are challenged by the SCPA, who agrees our budgets, and part of that challenge comes to us as Audit Scotland to make sure that we are making our own efficiencies and keeping things as tight as possible. Obviously, we don't operate to generate a profit, so our focus is on keeping costs as tight as we can and keeping our audit approach as efficient as we can. So the last section is other matters, which touches on internal audit. We're not planning to place formal reliance on internal audit to reduce the amount of work we do, but we will take account of everything that internal audit reports to inform our audit approach, and where we can use the findings of internal audit, we'll do so. And it does note formally that your appointed auditor has changed, so that's now myself as Brian retires, but also to assure you that there's continuity in the audit team in Maggie Bruce as your senior audit manager, and indeed the lead senior auditor remains Pamela Bryan. So there'll be that continued relationship with the council there. And there's some information there on our ethical standards and our compliance with that, and also a bit of background on our quality process, because we obviously need to operate robust audit quality and delivering services. So thanks very much for your patience with that. As I say, there are things I am required to report to those charged with governance, which is this committee. So I'll just pause there and see if there are any questions from members.
Do members have questions? Councillor Barrett, you have two.
Thank you, convener, and thank you to Rachel Brown for the introduction, and welcome back to Perth and Kinross. My first question is, my understanding is that it's a statutory requirement that we have to report by the 30th of September. Last year we were told that we would have the accounts by the 31st of October. We got them on the 11th of December, and that also impacted the council finance team's resources in preparing for our 24-25 budget. So it is quite significant. It's not just the audit work that's going on. And I just wondered how much confidence we can have that these accounts will be delivered to us for the 2nd of December. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Councillor. And yes, we are aware that the delay on our side in terms of completing the audit work, it's a capacity issue for us. So we are recruiting more auditors, which are generally at trainee level. So we will then have to train them how to audit. So over time, we will recover our audit delivery deadlines. So yes, I'm acutely aware it's not ideal reporting after the end of September. We've agreed this timescale with officers so that up front, I don't wish to overpromise anything and then miss a deadline. So looking at scheduled audit committees, audit risk committees, I should say, we are agreed with officers that the fieldwork should be done by the end of October for a clearance meeting at the start of November. So the financial statements work, as you'd say, should be done by then. All going well and barring resignations and illness. But that's from my perspective, that's a practical timescale that we can sign up to. And then that's scheduled in for the next available to this committee, rather than asking for a special committee to be set up for that purpose.
Thank you. And just the other question is on paragraph 14. Reporting threshold last year was $250,000 and it's doubled to $500,000. Can you explain why? Thank you.
Yes, in previous years, there's been a cap set on the reporting threshold for all public sector auditors so that it could not be above £250,000. So that cap has been removed because it covered all all sorts of public sector audits of all different magnitudes and financial thresholds. So audit teams now set, or I personally, as your appointed auditor, set a level that I think is a reasonable basis for reporting errors. So for me, the percentage looking at our planning materiality, looking at reporting threshold for local government, I would not want to raise it above £500,000. We can raise it up to 5% of planning materiality. That's the bandwidth we have in that regard. But for me, I would find it difficult to justify to a person on the street, or indeed an elected member, that something more than £500,000 could be considered, as the standard says, clearly trivial. And also, just to say, if there was something that was below that level, but I felt you needed to know about it, I would report something below that. That's that threshold, so that you don't have to hear every error that we find of some magnitude. Thank you.
I have a question. You said that we should report to you if we have any concerns about fraud. Would you like us at any point to make a formal assurance that we have no concerns about fraud?
I was going to say, I don't require anything formal. I will check with you now with the annual audit plan if there's anything where I'm saying I am rebutting the presumed risk of fraud for the following reasons. If that jarred with you as a committee, I would want you to tell me. And then when I bring the annual audit report and my proposed audit opinion to the December committee, I will check again, because we will set out commentary on addressing fraud risks there as well. So it's just to check. There's a letter of representation that will come with the audited financial statements, whereby Section 95 officer will confirm that we've had all the information disclosed to us as auditors, and that's just a way for me to check when bringing the audited financial statements and annual audit report to you, that you as elected members have reported everything, that there's not something has come up at that time that has not already been disclosed to audit. So it's just for completeness.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from members? And are there any comments from members? Well, I'd like to thank Ms. Bruce, Ms. Brown and Mrs. Bruce for coming along today, and thank you for being so clear with your audit plan. And we look forward to seeing you over the course of the year. Thank you for that. We now move on to internal audit follow-up. Can I ask Mrs. Clark to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, convener. This report presents outcomes from internal audits follow-up process, which monitors and ensures that management actions have been effectively implemented. There were 2 actions which had a completion date up to the end of January, both of which have been completed. So there's no reporting by exception on this occasion. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? The report just says two actions. Are you able to describe them in more detail, or are they private?
These actions would have been provided to the committee before. To be completely honest, because they have been completed, I've not really looked at those since February, but I can certainly get the information to you after the committee.
There's no particular reason that there's something secret, or?
Not at all. No, the actions that are agreed come to this committee in the form of the audit reports with the agreed action. And once the agreed actions have been completed, then we mark them on our database as having been completed and report that outcome to this committee.
Ms Simpson.
Yeah, I think the point is that we do exception reporting to the audit committee. So when the plan and the follow-up is given on at every meeting where we say where things are due, it's only where things have not been completed within the due date that we report up to you in the update. So it's just everything's been done within the timescale that the plan has said. So you'll see it reflected in the overall update on the plan in terms of completion, but nothing is being brought to you by way of an update because it's exception reporting.
Are there any comments, members? We'll move on to the internal. Oh, sorry. Can I ask if the report can be agreed? Thank you. Move on to the internal order update and ask Mrs. Clark to introduce the report.
Thank you, convener. This report highlights progress against planned internal audit work since the last committee, which is included within the report and the appendix. I'd like just to draw the committee's attention to paragraph 5.3, which is in relation to community engagement assignment, which had an indicative scope to review the effectiveness of arrangements in place for engaging with communities. As elected members will be aware, community empowerment and engagement is the subject of a transformation and change work stream, which will provide recommendations to the council later this year. Having reviewed the content of what was being covered within that review, it was felt at this point that there would be no additional benefit to internal audit getting involved and undertaking a formal internal audit review. And as such, internal audit activity was paused, and I will reconsider the inclusion of this along with any other transformation and change work as part of future years' internal audit work.
Do members have any questions for Mrs. Clark? Or any comments? Councillor Barrett, I see you have a question.
Yeah, it's just on page 61, just to ask how often, this is about the report on the report being provided to services to show their fuel spend and highlighting the top 4 and lowest 4 vehicles and equipment. Just how often is that report to be provided to the services, please?
Thank you for the question. I think there's probably something that we'll come to when we actually look at the detail of the fuel report itself. But that information is being provided to services monthly.
And I'm not seeing any comments. Okay. Are members happy to agree the report? Great, thank you very much. And now going to ask Mrs. Clark to introduce the report on the internal audit report on climate change.
Thank you, convener. This audit was undertaken in line with the agreed internal audit plan, with the control objective to ensure the adequacy of governance arrangements to deliver on the council's climate change strategy. I've assessed that reasonable assurance can be placed on the controls overall, but this is in relation to the limited sphere of influence that the council has regarding climate change. The report's identified 5 actions which are arising and are included within the report, Fraser Crofts as strategic lead for this area, and Serge Marone as service manager are here for any specific questions on the detail. I would also add that this report has been shared with the chair of the Perth and Kinross Climate Change Commission as well for his information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do members have any questions for officers? Can I ask one of the officers to report on how well the Climate Change Commission is moving forward? Mr. Morona.
Thank you for the question, convener. I can give you an update on where the Perth Climate Change Commission is at the moment. The commission, as you maybe remember, was set up through an open and transparent process to recruit the members. So the council was effectively coordinating the recruitment to the commission. And particularly there was the need to have at least 25% of the members under 25 years old to effectively encourage engagement of young people into the commission. So when the commission was set up, we managed to recruit enough members to the commission. And during the first year of the commission, it's effectively trying to settle into what the role of the commission will be, what focus they would like to have, and also how they would like to engage with the different stakeholders, across the area. It took some time. The Commission was involved, for instance, in the Youth Climate Change Conference. Some of the young commissioners there were effectively been quoted at the council meeting following the conference and urging, obviously, to take action for young member of the community and also adults across the area. So there was kind of positive, progress from the Commission. However, it took some time for the Commission to settle, and they started to lose a wee bit some of the members. So in the autumn, they agreed that they should really invigorate the Commission and start a new recruitment process to replace the people who left the Commission. And also try to focus on key elements, particularly community engagements, and trying to work better with local groups like climate cafes or bloom committees or people who are already embedded in the community, instead of trying to develop new links or not doing that with them. So that's what they're doing at the moment. So effectively they are in transformation. They are trying to revitalize the membership. And when they've done that, I think they will be in a position effectively to have a more, a kind of a stronger role, and maybe, a more visible role. They're also working at the moment in establishing a website which will help to be the platform to start that new process.
Right, thank you for that. It's very, very helpful. Do members have any other questions? No. Do members have any comments on the paper? I'd like to thank the internal auditors for the work in this topic, and I'd ask members if we can agree the report. Right, thank you very much. We now move on to the internal report on fuel, and Mrs. Clark is going to introduce the report.
Thank you, convener. This is a report on fuel where we've examined the objective of ensuring that arrangements are in place for the safe storage and utilisation of council fuel supplies. 10 findings have arisen from this piece of work, with 14 actions that have been agreed by the service to address the findings. On balance, the assessment has been that limited assurance can be placed on the controls in relation to this area, although we have noted at 5.3 as well that there are some areas of good practice within the service, which we would definitely acknowledge. The new fleet manager has been in place for a short period of time, and he's taking forward those the actions that are detailed within the action plan. Nigel Taylor, who is here from the service to answer any specific questions as well. Thank you.
Are there any questions for officers? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. I was just really seeking more information on the section 6.9 where it says receiving fuel at depots, and there seems to be some sort of inconsistency in the recording of that. It's mentioned in the report that where this has occurred, the foreman will undertake a reasonableness check with reference to the tank gauge. How accurate is that tank gauge? Is it a digital gauge, or is it just a line of sight, or how can you tell us how accurate that is? Thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
Thanks for the question. We have a mix of both digital and visual, non-digital gauges on our tanks, and we are looking to make sure that those are all brought up to date and they are all part of an improvement that links directly with our fuel management system, which is called FuelTran. The inconsistencies that you mentioned at the beginning of your question arose from two parts. The first is that in our the main fuel transactions take place in the PKC Frighton depot and the Tayside contracts run Blairgowrie depot. All those deliveries and transactions are monitored very closely. The difficulties came at our Kinross, Pitlochry and Crieff depots, where we weren't always able to match our delivery time with the presence of a foreman or supervisor on site. So there have been inconsistencies picked up there. The solution in the longer term, which will be later this year, will be that when we do take a fill from a delivery, that it will be automatically recorded on the system, rather than to have a situation where we have a manual update, which is then takes time to update on FuelTran, and it leaves us with a day or possibly 2 days of fuel withdrawals that skew the figures. I'm sorry if I've mixed up those two answers.
Thank you. Councillor Chan.
I was wondering if our vehicles were fitted with anti-siphoning systems on all the vehicles.
Not all, but we, with every new vehicle that we purchase, the anti-siphon feature is fitted to every one of them.
Great, thank you. My question is there any evidence of fraud in this case?
Not as far as I'm aware. In terms of the report as a whole, we welcome the report, and we are grateful for the assistance that we've had from the internal audit team to refine our systems, and we're not aware of any instances of fraud. We would contend that the last audit report took place approximately 8 years ago. And during that period of time, Perth and Kinross Council did not have all its vehicles fitted with trackers or telemetry. We now have that across the board. And so the opportunities for potential fraud, theft of fuel, mismanagement of fuel have been radically minimised during that 8-year period. And the report mentions that we have CCT coverage on all our pumps, and service managers, as one of the findings in the report, be receiving more up-to-date information regarding each of their vehicles so that they can spot any anomalies. At the moment, they have a monthly invoice, and so that they can financially see any aberrations of spend. But what they can't do is to link it to the amount of miles that a particular vehicle is doing. We are in a position, because the data was on our fuel trans system, to provide that information, and we've put the arrangements in place for that.
Okay. Are there any more questions? I don't see any. Are there any comments? My comment would be to thank everybody involved in this report, and I think it underlines it's a great example of how important internal audit is in reducing risk and refining processes and hopefully reducing costs overall. So I'd like to thank everybody involved in it. And are members happy to agree the report? Great, thank you. We now move to a private session on partnership working, and so I'd like everybody to come out of the public session and move to the private session, please. Thank you.